Maine is, of course, known for our abundant fisheries and beautiful coastline. But in today's episode, we'll be focusing on the up-and-coming aquaculture industry, specifically kelping out in Casco Bay.
And we sit down with researchers and biologists who are working on the front lines of this industry to talk about the environmental and economic impacts of this ocean crop.
So get ready to hit the high seas as we battle the elements to catch seaweed?
Seaweed? Thanks.
Seaweed.
I don't know.
All this and more on today's episode of We Go! We Go is brought to you by Visit Maine and Baxter Brewing.
Maine has so much history and cultural identity with fishing. Generations of families have lived and thrived on the ocean, but in recent years, we have dwindled down to dependency on mostly the lobster. And with warming temperatures, this could potentially be an issue with them moving away to colder waters.
So we sat down with Susie Arnold, one of Maine's marine scientists, to speak about kelp as an environmental aid to combat climate change.
My job is basically focused on climate change impacts to the Gulf of Maine and how those impacts are affecting fishing communities. At the same time, investigate the impacts of ocean acidification on the Gulf of Maine.
Ocean acidification happens when there is excess carbon being absorbed by the oceans, which upsets the pH balance of the water, negatively affecting many of the landing shellfish that Maine fishermen depend on.
So if you've got a big kelp farm with lots of kelp growing really quickly, it is pulling CO2 out of that environment, actually changing the water chemistry around the farm.
Now that our brains are full of marine knowledge, Kat and I head out to find the kelp farm where Justin and his crew have been working all day to get our hands dirty in this new industry for Maine.
This will be our third harvest year.
Oh, so
Yeah.
is it still pretty new for you?
So it's pretty new for me, but it's pretty new for the state of Maine in general. We were one of the first couple farms to start. So we'll seed it in October, usually right around Halloween. And then in the spring, April, May, we come back out. And this time of year, when it gets long, it'll actually grow a couple inches a day.
Wow.
So the sunny days, you'll get 6, 12 inches longer every day that you leave it out here.
So this is the line. Does it just grow naturally? Like you just have one? Are there seeds on the line? Or
So
does
we
it...
seed it. So if you
Okay.
look, see this little line?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's
So when it starts off, it looks like a brown line that's covered in seed.
Wow.
And you run that down on top of this line, and it seeds the whole thing. So every time the tide comes and goes, it's like water in your
Wow,
farm, but
okay.
the tide does it for us every time it comes in and out.
Does all of the kelp we're harvesting today only go to a place where it's eaten, or is it used for other purposes too?
We only grow kelp that you eat.
So at the end of each harvest day, Justin and his crew bring the kelp to Atlantic Sea Farms, who process it immediately.
They buy all of our kelp, and then they turn it into seaweed salads and sea cheese. And
Sea
cheese.
cheese!
Like
Let's
kimchi,
go!
like kimchi, but with kelp. So we have
Oh, sorry.
15,000 foot long lines. So it
Each one is
starts-
15,000 feet long?
Each one's 1,000 feet long.
They're 15,000 feet long.
1,000 foot long lines.
I'm with you. That's a lot of kelp to cut. While we start on that, here's some Baxter facts.
And welcome to the second edition of Baxter Facts. Although it looks like a plant or a tree, kelp is actually a form of algae. It can grow up to 18 inches a day and up to 100 feet long in the ocean. And kelp creates gas-filled pods called pneumatosis, say that 3 times fast, that float to the surface. All right, now back to the show.
Kelp fit the best with fishing because it's kind of in our slow season. So this time of year, lobsters aren't really running that much. So now we focus on kelp, and it gives us supplemental income in a time where otherwise we're just kind of hanging out waiting for the lobsters to show up.
Are these pieces going to keep growing, or do you want to cut them all off so they have a fresh start?
So after that goes through both blocks, it falls off and lands in the crates. And then that way the rope's clean so we can seed it again next year without having to actually pull it off.
Do you feel any sort of sense of connection to it, like you're a steward of the bay and this environment?
Of course. So obviously we're trying to do the best we can for the ocean and the whole land around us. That's how we make our living. So it's nice because while the kelp's growing, it's also cleaning up the water and cleaning up the air, which is better for all of our lobsters. Nothing much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The crew steams back to harbor with over 6,000 pounds of freshly harvested Maine kelp. And while they unload their haul for the day, Carolyn sits down with Jesse of Atlantic Sea Farms.
So we are a kelp aquaculture company. We're based here in Maine, and we work with 24 partner fishermen farmers up and down the coast of Maine to grow kelp in their off-season from fishing. What that means is providing them with kelp seed for free. We give them kelp seed from our nursery in the fall for them to seed their lines. But the heartbeat of what we do is really driving impact back to our coast, working with fishermen to find new ways for future generations to continue to work on the water in a sustainable way in the face of climate change.
We obviously just came from harvesting kelp out on the water, and talk to me about the process of getting it from there, going to you, and then where it goes next.
So once the kelp is landed here, it comes to our facility, and it is in the process of becoming a delicious, easy-to-use food within 12 hours of harvest. So we're really locking in that flavor, that texture, but also all of the nourishing qualities of kelp. Right here in our own waters, we're able to really efficiently grow a super nutrient-dense food in a sustainable way.
Well, there's only one thing left to do after a hard day's work: eat.
So looks like we have a generous helping of kelp on top of our salad.
We've got a kelp compliment, I believe they call it. Yup,
Yeah.
salad featuring kelp.
It's crazy that we were out there harvesting kelp and now it's here on our plate and I'm about to eat it.
You know what they say, boat to table.
All right, well, what a quintessential day out on the Maine waters of Casco Bay.
Couldn't have asked for anything better.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for watching.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.